right. Yeah, we'll just scream. Actually, you can scream, Ben. All right. Good morning, everyone. I thought instead of having everyone just introduce themselves, you can just introduce yourselves when it's your first time speaking, so we don't go through the boring thing where everyone does that. Oh, great, mics for everyone. No screaming, unfortunately, though. All right, so first question. I am someone who idealistically has wanted this moment to come for a long time. I'm an old open source person. I want decentralization. I think all of us here do, right? However, I'm kind of curious, I feel like there's this divide of people who are like me, who are just ideologically driven, and pragmatic reality. So the question is this movement pragmatic, practical? Is it business driven? Is it ideological? And then what are the first wins that we have seen or will be seeing in decentralized compute? Just for anyone who wants to take it.
Yeah, I can start. My name's Casey. Can you guys hear me?
Okay. Yeah, it's on.
Okay, better. Yeah, my name's Casey. I run a fund called Topology. It's a frontier tech fund, and we do a lot in crypto, as well as outside of crypto and pure AI as well. And before this, I was an engineer originally at Google, and most recently was at Paradigm and spent 3.5 years working with Bessemer as well. So I will say that it is definitely on the practical side. I firsthand am very close to the inference side of this market, as well as the training, but on the inference side specifically already, we're seeing these services get the cost delta of around 90% cheaper than closed source providers. And we've had, to give a really concrete example, just this week, I saw a decentralized inference provider close a contract and win against Google, who was multiples more expensive, and it's because of the decentralized nature that they can offer this cost benefit. And so even with all the ideology aside, this is still pragmatically what we're seeing in market.
Is that the compute cost, or is it the fact that the models are also open, or is it both?
Meaning, where are we getting that cost delta from?
Yeah.
The reason we're able in this situation is because we're aggregating spare compute across the world, and therefore the cost of that, just from a supply-demand standpoint, we're able to offer that compute at such a lower cost. And so that's the reason, is just the aggregation of spare compute that otherwise wouldn't be making any money. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, yes. Jake? Can you hear me? Not yet.
Testing. There we go. So your question is really about kind of progress in decentralized AI. I'm the founder and CEO of CoinFund, and we have been kind of looking at this area since our first investment in the end of 2020 here in a company called World. But about 2 years ago, it was considered an impossibility that AI training could take place on the internet, on a decentralized network. And the reasoning was fairly robust. It's like you had big tech build enormous, highly optimized data centers with incredible high-end compute and really, really fast interconnects between those GPUs that enabled them to sort of brute force these giant trainings. And when you kind of went to people who were doing this, and you said, hey, how about we take this process and put it onto a decentralized network where instead of 400 gigabyte per second interconnects, we're going to bring that down to 70 or 80 megabytes per second on the internet. And by the way, this network can be attacked, and everyone will be using commodity gaming GPUs. A lot of people's reaction to that was, that's impossible. That's never going to happen. But as some of my portfolio companies like to remind me, we can solve hard problems. And this is what I really love, is working with teams who sit down and figure this stuff out. And one of those teams is a company that we backed at pre-seed, which Casey is an investor in, as well as of the seed round, called Pluralis. And what Pluralis launched just a few weeks ago is an incredible milestone paper, which says that we can take the amount of data that flows between training nodes and compress it losslessly to about 1% of its size, and then reconstruct it losslessly at the other node. And what that means is we can now use commodity hardware and regular slow internet to pool a bunch of GPUs and start to train models at ever-increasing scale, approaching frontier scale. And the last thing I'll say is, this has been a journey where everyone said this couldn't possibly work. Like Alex, the founder of Pluralis, went to his PhD advisor who said it couldn't work. He talked to people at DeepMind, and he writes in his blog post at the Cedar, and he said, my decision to continue on this project was completely irrational. And yet they got the result. So I think this result is so important because while big tech owns 90% of high-end compute represents only about 2% of GPUs in the world. And we know from crypto and Web3 that we can build enormous compute networks like Bitcoin that can even be like #1 in the world on certain dimensions. And so from here, I have a lot of confidence we're going to see a lot of AI production on decentralized networks in the future.
So, hello everyone, I'm Ben Parr. I've been in AI for over a decade. My co-founder and I run 3 AI businesses because we're lunatics. Octane AI, which is a traditional Web 2 AI business, powers AI for thousands of e-commerce businesses. Yes, No Error, which is our most recent thing. It is a Web3 AI agent auditing not just all the world's scientific research papers, but helping audit everything from ex post to other content to find truth and allow people to audit information and verify information, regardless of where it comes from. And then my co-founder and I are also investors. We have an AI fund called Theory Forge Ventures, where we invest across the spectrum in AI. So I've been doing this on both sides of the table, and I'll speak from a slightly broader perspective, which is I feel like this movement started out more ideological and then became more practical over time, and strategic over time. So a couple thoughts came to mind immediately hearing these two talk. One, obviously the most amount of GPUs are owned by a small group of companies. So I thought a lot about, so you all know Scale AI, you saw that Facebook acquired, basically acqui-hired it for 49%. It was a way to acquire them without having any of the legal stuff for acquisition. And then they lost a whole ton of customers, which was expected by them. But if you're Google, if you're a small company, why would you allow someone else, your competitor, to have all that training data, to be, see all that kind of thing? I sat on the board of a competitor of Scale AI called Sama that did the AI data training for GPT-3. I know that space really well. And the point I have here is, if you're building a truly revolutionary AI, or even if you're just training your model, why would you put it on a Google Cloud or a Microsoft Cloud? You don't think that they're going to go and look at that in some case, especially if you're starting to grow? Of course they are. And so you need to have a way to access decentralized GPUs. You need to have a way to train your models. And it's become so much cheaper than paying for the radical increase in cost, like the upcharge, I should say, for the few more centralized providers. And the end result is, if you want to go and build an AI that is not going to have something potentially stolen, even that small risk, then you have to go decentralized. And just luckily, it also now is much cheaper. It's become much more efficient. It's so much easier to access these things thanks to things like Akash. By the way, can we also just give a round of applause to Greg and the Akash team for bringing us all together? I hear they're going to flood this entire room with just a giant cold bath, so you're going to all get wet later. I said that. You could tell them. Just overall, I'm not going to go in, overall, it's become a more strategic thing than it used to be just an ideological thing. Because in the past, when it was a little bit, before the boom, and you were, trying to train a model, it didn't really matter who you were doing it on, just because the big companies didn't care. Now they really care. Every little bit of data helps them, has an advantage. And so you have to protect your data. And I'll say it lastly, my co-founder and I really believe in certain use cases for AI for being decentralized. My co-founder built this AI agent, Yes, No Error, auditing all the world's scientific research papers. It goes through scientific research papers every couple of seconds and audits them. But my co-founder and I realized that we were making the decisions of which paper would it be next, or the AI agent was, and we wanted the community to be able to do that. So my co-founder, the genius he is, literally built a feature in it where someone could just tag yes, no error in an X post, and it automatically like rank and verify and score that post for truthfulness and for verifiable facts. And we wanted to give the community the ability to make those kinds of decisions, because that's the spirit of the way AI should go over the long term, something that's accessible to everybody, something that's not controlled by a couple companies solely. Yeah, you can clap.
Yeah, you may clap. Panels are no fun if everyone agrees, so let me disagree with you a little bit. I'm a moderator, so I'm not supposed to, I guess. So I'll put this out. Someone else, yeah. You may knock me out. You say that like we cannot be putting our model training, our data into like Microsoft's cloud, et cetera. And I get that the context is different now. However, we have been running our businesses off of these clouds forever with all of our sensitive data. Also, as humans, like we all, like everyone here would say, yes, I want privacy. If asked, do you want privacy? Is that a thing you should have? Yes. Then we all go dox ourselves on Instagram nonstop every day. We do the wrong thing. We're all using like these note-taking apps. Who knows where the data is? I don't know where, is it like encrypted at rest, et cetera. So my point is, like, I think the reason we really have to be thinking about business cases, and it probably ends up having to be something beyond just cost, because it's a race to the bottom ultimately, is there has to be like economic incentives, real economic incentives to drive this behavior. Am I wrong?
I'll just say that I don't think you're wrong. I'm not a purist by any sense. Like, Okta AI uses AWS to do its AI, but I don't think of Microsoft or Google as competitors to the AI company doing some stuff for e-commerce brands. It really depends on what you're doing in the use case, right? You know what's best for your AI company, AI model. And the other truth is, like, if you're just starting out, you know, cost and feature set and those things are going to probably matter more. But as you're scaling up, these kinds of considerations do come into play. So you can't, it's really hard to do everything completely without touching one of those companies, and that's okay. But over time, I think it really just kind of depends on what kind of AI you're building, what kind of model you're seeing, and what kind of competitors you think you're going to have over the course of the next, like, 5 to 10 years.
I think it's a legitimate concern. You might have heard recently there was a deal where Meta acquired 49% of Scale AI. And of course, Scale is a business that curates labeled data for AI training. But what happened shortly after is that all of Scale's major customers, like Microsoft and OpenAI, who are competitive with Meta, pulled their contracts. And I think that's a pointer to the fact that they were concerned about the privacy and competitive integrity of their data.
So speaking of privacy, how do we solve this problem? Because here we are at a crypto-related conference, and everyone in crypto is confused that because the word crypto exists, then it's all private. It's actually the opposite, right? Everything's public. So, like, how do we solve it? What's solved now? What do you think are the big risks that we haven't figured out?
Well, I think the beauty of creating AI on decentralized networks is that we're using decentralized networks for what they do best, which in my opinion is creating public goods. So what's so interesting about these networks that train AI and host AI is that we're poised to live in a world where there's a much higher degree of transparency. Like today, when Meta releases like Llama 4, and they say that this model is open, what they mean is that the weights and biases of that model are open. And Stability AI was a startup, for example, that tried to make a whole business model, or at least try to go to market as someone who was creating open weight models. I would say like that kind of openness didn't go well for monetization. If you're, a lot of people are able to inference a stable diffusion model on their MacBook, so not as many people are willing to pay for the inference of such a model. But what's so interesting about these large-scale networks, especially if they can reach, sort of a frontier scale or performance, is that the weights and biases of those models will be co-owned by many different nodes. And no single entity will own all of the weights. And what that implies is that there's a monetization strategy in such a network. And in essence, you pay the network for inference. But at the same time, that model is extremely more open than what we have today. And that is because in such a setup, you will know what data it is trained on, what hardware it is trained on, what architecture it's using, and so on. And so if you wanted to clone that, the analogy is GitHub. If you wanted to fork that model and gather your own or crowdfund your own resources to do something competitive, you could do that. This is going to be a massive win for open innovation. We know open source, especially in AI, helps this space move much more quickly, and we know that proprietary AI dramatically slows progress down.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Jake's saying, and I think that a lot of commercial companies use open source as a distribution or a go-to-market strategy. So things like Vercel and Next, or I don't know if you guys know what like HashiCorp is, but this is a well-known strategy in the developer tools ecosystem. And one thing that this community can do is work together to monetize open source directly. And I don't think we've had a shot at that before. And the technology that we're all talking about and investing behind is going to hopefully enable that. And so that's super exciting for the future of open source being more sustainable and symbiotic with the rest of the ecosystem.
And here you're talking about open source as in code and open source as in models, yeah?
In the data as well.
I will go a little bit more punchy. There's just two things, as someone who's been on both sides of the Web 2, Web 3 kind of spectrum, for those who are in crypto, that always has to be remembered, which is usefulness and usability. The reason, for example, why ChatGPT is the dominant AI that people use is not necessarily because it's better. It's, you could make the argument that Gemini and others are better or equal in many ways. It's usability. It's so easy to open a chat and talk to it. Most people, frankly, don't know how to figure out how to set up a wallet or open a wallet. Like, people are not as smart or have as much time as you think to figure out your UX and your UI. And a lot of times when I am at Web3 crypto events, the conversations get so deeply technical versus like, what does this do for the end developer or for the end user? And that's like the usability component and the usefulness component. Like, your competition isn't the like other companies in crypto. It's, Web 2 equivalents, right? So I think about, for example, two examples. So one, my co-founder and I are investors in a company called Payman. We were the first check, founded by the former head of dev relations at Uniswap and Dapper Labs. They are the payments infrastructure for AIs to pay other AIs and AIs to pay humans. It's super simple to set up as a developer. You want an AI to pay other AIs, like in games or something. You want an AI to pay humans to do tasks. You integrate them in. It can be decentralized because it gets its own wallet. Super easy to go and use. Super easy to understand what it does. My co-founder on the usability side, with yes, no error.
Is it working?
What?
Is it working?
You can use it, yes.
But how's just the traction? I'm just curious because that category is really interesting.
They have a lot. I have to go check the most recent numbers. They have a lot of developers signed up. They're coming out with another version of the private beta. They just raised. We were the first check that raised $10 million from Coinbase and from Freestyle pretty recently, and they just came out of HF0. So I think it was like 50,000 plus developers using them for different things. There's a couple of interesting use cases like games that have really come out of them recently. They're in that phase where like people are starting to explore what are the use cases of AIs to pay other AIs, because it's such a new and novel concept. It's an insane concept actually when you think about it. When we first heard about it, we were like, that's nuts. That's the kind of thing we like to write a check in, because we don't know if that will work or not. But if it does, and you're the payments infrastructure for AIs to pay for things, you're going to be a multi-billion-dollar company. So I don't want to give you an exact number right now because I like to check with the founders just before, but I know they've gotten a lot. They got huge traction initially before they've gotten a bunch of new developers to go and sign up. They've been really refining the use cases. I'll add at the end, my co-founder made yes no error a lot more usable by making it so that anyone could just tag at yes no error in a Twitter thread to audit someone's Twitter thread and be like, is this truthful? Is this not truthful? He wanted to make it as simple as possible. You should go and try it. I mean, I'm biased, of course. Or you could just upload a file to yesnoerror.com and it'll give you an audit. He just made it as simple as possible to go and do things. Simplicity in terms of usability is the thing that just makes traction happen, regardless if it's Web 2 or Web 3. And I feel like a lot of people forget that sometimes.
Certainly here in crypto, yeah. And I know this from like the old Linux days. There's also a thing where in the early days you want it to be hard because you're like in this secret community. But now we're obviously not there. And an interesting point you were talking about is you're not competing with the other crypto companies here. You're competing with Web 2. That is something I really love about crypto. We come to these things, and I feel like I'm meeting my colleagues because we're all like collectively trying to create this public good, as Jake said. So, question for you, like if you think of us just being this big blob of decentralized compute and decentralized AI here, trying to compete with the hyperscalers, how can we do that? What's like the short-term strategy? We're one big decentralized company. What's the short-term strategy? What's the longer-term strategy? What are our advantages now and in the future?
I can give you my view on that, which is, I think where we are right now in decentralized AI is that we're building out like the lowest levels of the tech stack for it. So training, Casey has done a lot of work in inference. Also data, how are these models going to get data at the scale of the bigger companies? But I think the kind of table stakes is, can we gather enough scalability dimensions, like data, compute? There's actually like 10 others. I have a tweet on this. There's like 12 scaling dimensions that you could use to create like better, more intelligent models. And that's just kind of the table stakes. Like, can we train models and provide them, at the frontier? And I think the longer term strategy, if you really look at what the big tech companies are doing, like OpenAI, yes, they're competing on intelligence, but by and large, the delta between the frontier models in terms of intelligence is fairly small. And what they're actually competing on more is capturing the customer. And that is why, you have a desktop app from OpenAI, a mobile app, you have voice, you have this, you have that, you have integrations. And so what that implies is the Web3 AI stack can't just compete on infrastructure forever. It has to go to the consumer layer at some point in the future as well. And I actually think the story for that is very compelling, because if I'm going to be giving away my consumer application data, let's say you're doing, a health app where you're gathering kind of your biomarkers and lab tests and workout statistics and so on, do I want to give that data to OpenAI, or do I now have an alternative where I could put it into a more transparent, open model that could benefit other people, or at least be, more transparent with what it's doing with my data? And I like to think that people will start to choose, that.
Here's a question for you all. What is the OpenAI or ChatGPT of decentralized AI? Anyone? We need to have more of that, because, and that was like two people saying it instead of being like, that's still nowhere near like the visibility. My point is, killer use case is always the thing that makes people be like, oh, I should really pay attention. Like, and yes, that's the closest one that we have right now. Like, no matter what, we're talking about the consumer right over here. The killer use case that you can all go and talk about is the thing that's going to like rise the tide and like, rise all boats. And that's probably the thing that we need most right now. And I'm sure someone is building this in here. I wonder which one of you is building that. Okay, there you go. So, killer use case.
Raise your hand if you're building it. Yeah. Oh, there's only 3 people. Okay.
6.
We can talk to you.
More confidence, everyone.
Okay, we're all building it. Good point. Yes, thank you. So what you're saying is we need a killer use case, which has also been true for crypto since we started. They're saying we need consumer applications, which has also been true for crypto since we started. Does that mean we're doomed? Like, What's different now that's going to make the crypto industry be able to pull this off?
I'll now stop talking. The difference is that AI has so many like really clear positive use cases to be usable in people's lives, and that people know how to use it at its basic level, that you can build for hundreds, if not thousands of use cases for that right now. So like, regardless of the use case of crypto, like, money only has, like, interestingly, like, there's like smaller limited set of use cases where you need to pay for certain things, especially for paid decentralized things. There's unlimited use cases when it comes to artificial intelligence in terms of every single vertical of work and life that you can go and do. People use it for, just go talk to college students and see how much of their lives are run by it.
Makes sense. So we have here 4 nerds on the stage, apologies if you don't identify as such, who are also investors sometimes, some of us all the time. What do you want to see built? Like, what are we missing? What are you, like, pattern matching, waiting for someone to come tell you they're going to build?
That's a good question. I'm gonna think, for real.
We're going to sit here silently while we all...
Well, I mean, look, I think we have a lot of work to do in decentralized AI training. I think we're doing well. I think we have examples in the market. We have Prime Intellect has launched a 32 billion parameter model that was trained on decentralized networks. Jensen has a 60,000 participant swarm that does reinforcement learning. We have traditional AI founders kind of writing in their blogs. They think that decentralized training will go to like 100 billion parameters by the end of the year. But I think beyond the training, I'd love to hear like Casey on where inference is today. It always struck me that inference was a kind of a more costly thing to do in a decentralized context. So like, why are people buying that? And I think we have a lot of work to do in data, like for the decentralized AI space. And finally, there's, how do we take all of that to market and actually compete? So what's the consumer angle on this? Are we competing directly with ChatGPT, or are we enabling kind of frontier video and audio models first, or like what are the order of operations to compete?
I'm happy to answer that. I have one request for startup that's very authentic, but something I think a lot about is data, and I was an early investor in something called Vana, which is now one of the most popular data protocols. And it took us many years to get where we are today, many, many years. And what we've learned over that path is there are a lot of data sources that are just totally untapped today. So I'll give you a concrete example. To me, the most valuable data set we still don't have is a neural data set, so brain activity. And I would love to see somebody use like a DeepIn network, distributed infrastructure to collect that data, because right now the limiting factor in getting a neuro device to work is that we don't have a model for it. And we don't have a model for it because we don't have the data, and we don't have the data because it's actually pretty expensive to have people wear these machines. And so it's a perfect use case for a DeepIn network. And if you're building that, come find me after. But yeah, does that answer that question? Yeah. And then to Jake's point, I agree with him in that we're kind of, I guess I disagree with you that we need to lean into the consumer stuff, actually. Like, I'm a big believer in Venice, and I see your point there. But I also think that crypto AI is so obviously taking advantage of the inherent structure of crypto from an infrastructure standpoint. And that's amazing. Like, it's amazing that the distributed nature of these machines unlocks inference, unlocks training. And even if it's not at the forefront of consumer adoption, I think it's already having waves of impact through the ecosystem.
So if anyone, I want that company too, Casey. So you call me if someone pitches you that, or pitch me directly, and I'll call Casey too.
We're working
all
on
three
it.
of us. There'll be a whole investment together. It'll be great.
No, you can add me too.
All 4 of
Thank
us. We have checks. People
The
gave us
checks
money.
are already made out, guys.
People gave us money for some reason. In general, is like 2 things. It's verticalized AI. So I'm a believer in really like verticalized use cases. You know, there are boring things that feel boring in terms of architecture or sewage or whatever it might be, where there's a lot of money to be made if you don't just focus exclusively on the one hottest or two hottest like use cases out in the market. God knows how many sales AI agents I've been pitched over the last year, and I won't write a check into a single one of those. But verticalized AI for you, like very verticalized solutions, you really understand that area, and there's a way that decentralized AI is advantageous. Awesome. The other one would be like we still need more infrastructure plays, and it's not just like GPUs. I think Akash and a few like have figured that one out. I wouldn't go compete with them, but security and better data storage and better data training. There's 100 different things that would make it easier for more developers and more people to build better and smarter and more private AIs that are going to be big companies over the next 5, 10, 15 years. And now is the time to build that layer on top of the GPU layer. So I want to hear about those companies.
So last question. Given the inherent potential dangers in where we're going collectively with AI, how does the decentralized world both help and maybe exacerbate the risks ahead of us? I shared a bunch of questions before we started, and then I'm asking a bunch that are not on the list, by the way.
my co-founder, Matt PRD, he's great to follow on Twitter and everything else, and had the conversation about what an ideal version of decentralized AI would look like. You could, I think this is going to get into a little bit more ideological. Like someone's going to, in the next couple of years, you're going to have an AGI built, and then you're going to have ASI, the superintelligence, built in the next few years. You don't want to have all of those AGIs and ASIs controlled by 3 companies. You just don't. You want to have the ability for deploying one of those decentralized, where it can be owned by the people, where it's not controlled by a single interest, where it can be influenced by a community. I think that's where decentralized AI may really shine. Matt and I actually love the idea of make a decentralized AI, give it a mission, and let it go off, and no one can stop it. For example, like a truth agent to be able to verify, which things are true or not, regardless of political party or position or things like that. I think we need to have the ability to launch these more advanced AIs that can't be controlled or shut down by a single person or small group of people with specific ideological interests. And just naturally, no matter what, even with the best of intentions, you build the ASI or the AGI, you're going to want it to serve your interests.
Yeah, that sounds both good and scary, the way you describe it. It's
we're entering a scary era.
Unstoppable thing out there that no one can control. So when it starts going rogue, then it's sort of
But the flip side is I'm less scared of the AI itself, like a Terminator-style thing, and much more scared of people with agendas and what they wanted, and they're already doing with AI now. What are they going to do? What are states going to do when they have access to AGI or ASI? That's scarier to me. Humans scare me less than AI sometime.
I mean, I guess a few thoughts on that. There's probably other examples in crypto of things that have come out there and were like beyond state control. I don't know, Tornado Cash or something, which now seem to be very under state control. I think we need to temper a little bit our expectations of AI progress. I mean, 12 months ago, the story was that more compute equals more intelligence. That's like, now consensus is that that's not the case, and we need more post-training to reach the next level of intelligence. And we're clearly seeing diminishing returns and like kind of a logarithmic graph in pre-training. But my general hypothesis is like, if these things are going to be more transparent, they're more likely to be safe. You're more likely to see issues kind of coming. You'll be able to react to them. Things like that. Just like when you think about like quantum computers, I don't think by the time that a quantum computer can actually break encryption, I don't think anyone will be surprised by that or not have a solution of some kind to that, to the risks associated with that.
All right. Well, that concludes our time. So thank you very much to the panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you.